A national scandal as the number of children living in temporary accommodation reaches a record high. We're going to read into this more from Sky News, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with an article from Sky News with the headline that as a national scandal as the number of children living in temporary accommodation reaches a record high. Local authorities are called on the government to urgently step in to help the increasing number of people having to rely on temporary accommodation from councils. Guys, while you're here, make sure you hit the like button and share it across social media so others are notified of this video. We are been aware for quite some time. I think everyone can agree for some time now that there is a housing crisis. I think everybody is quite adamant that there is a housing crisis across the whole. I can't speak much for Scotland, but I know obviously here in England, in particular places in some of the rural areas, there's pretty much everywhere there is a housing crisis. I don't think there's any particular place that I'm aware of where the housing is pretty good. I think this is a problem across many areas. And one of the issues has been this premise that people just didn't want more homes built where they are. For a long time, for 14 years under the Conservatives, and people can make their arguments about a Blair government not building enough houses as well. That's perfectly entitled to put that down in the comments below. But 14 years is a big gap. It's a very big gap. And the fact is, while there have been some homes built by under Conservative government, there just hasn't been enough built. And when authorities are stretched as they are, and councils are stretched when they are, when you have a cost of living crisis, when you have so many people who are struggling, what tends to happen is those local authorities are stretched so much that they just cannot help everybody that they need to help. Especially when there's when you've had for a long time, I had a government that's just been reluctant to put their hand in their pocket and help. It's not always just a case about the money, but obviously just being able to help with these issues. One of the other things, obviously, that councils have been trying to do is obviously trying to shift migrants and not migrants, sorry, trying to shift some people away from their areas to other areas to try and reduce the numbers. Unfortunately, in some cases, that they try to shift them like from one part of the country all the way to another part, which I think, while I don't see the logic behind it, I would understand it if it was somebody living alone, maybe, but we're talking about here, in particular here, we're talking about children. And they have to be priority. They are obviously the priority when it comes to temporary accommodation. And but if you are somebody living on your own and you go to a council looking for temporary accommodation, you're just not going to get any. If you're a woman, you might have a chance. You have a better chance, but if you're a man, you have no chance. And this is it literally is a national scandal that people can't find a home. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be entitled to free homes, but nobody should be homeless. No one should be left on the streets. Everyone should be able to have a home, to be able to pick themselves up and start from something, regardless of who you are, whatever your situation is. But councils need support in this. Now, yes, a Labour government have been in power for about a month. Could they be doing more? I'm pretty sure that they can do more. And we know that they can do more. Are they looking into this? I do think that they will be looking into this. And hopefully they will do enough to be able to help people that are in desperate need of this. Not just children, not just women, not just families, but everyone. Because I think, that the homelessness crisis is a really burden on us, as well as it's a terrible thing to have. I think it's very shameful that we have quite a lot of homeless people on the streets. I think it's really shameful that we have so many people who are, I don't look at it as people just struggling to get from each day to day. Surviving is the word that I like to think of. People are trying to survive in what is supposed to be one of the wealthiest countries on the planet. yeah, it's pretty depressing, really. So let's read into this. So a sharp rise in families living in temporary accommodation has prompted calls from English councils for the government to deal with the homelessness crisis. So the total number of people living in temporary accommodation across England rose by 12.3% to a record 117,450 households in the year up to March 2024. This is the latest government data has shown. Now, families with children in the temporary accommodation has increased by 14.7% in a year to 74,530. So we're, as of right now, families with children, according to their data, up to 24,000 are in temporary accommodation. Temporary. There were 151,630 children living in temporary accommodation. That marks an increase of 15% compared with the end of March last year. And this is the highest figure since the measures began in 2004. That's incredibly scary. 151 children living in temporary accommodation. And that's really, really bad as well. And it's also from an educational standpoint as well, because if they are in a school in that area where they're in that temporary accommodation, and if they have to move out of the area, that means you're disrupting that child's education as well. And especially, well, not just disrupting their education, but if they've come to make friends and all that kind of stuff in that school as well, or in the area, and you're taking them out of that area because obviously you're taking them from a temporary accommodation to either another temporary accommodation or a permanent accommodation, you're disrupting the children's lives in this as well. So you have that factor to play in as well, So yeah, that's really bad for them. This is another thing that hampers the education of our next generation of children, on top of all the other things that are hampering children's futures. Meanwhile, single households increased by 8.5% to 42,920. Councils have a legal duty to provide emergency interim accommodation to homeless people while they help them look for a permanent solution. Local authorities get some funding from the government for this, but many are facing financial difficulties. They're having to dig into their own coffers, taking away funding from other areas or going into debt. The District Council Newark, representing 169 English councils, has written to Housing Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner to call for the government to make funding changes off the back of the latest data. Homelessness Charity Crisis and the Local Government Association, which speaks for the local government, also signed the letter. In fact, they're signing the letter as well. Sky News has reported exclusive data from London councils last week showed that the cost of temporary accommodation for homelessness people in London has soared by 25% in the past year due to landlords selling up or choosing private tenants. They have also having to resort to expensive and often inadequate hotels and B&Bs, something that's happening across the country. This expenditure is forcing some London councils into potential bankruptcy. Data released on Friday found the issue of private landlords serving eviction notices remain a major reason for people having been made homeless. A total of 45.5% of households at risk of homelessness were in the private rented sector, which has decreased from 2% from the previous year. Yeah, the no-fault eviction the no-fault eviction was one thing that was definitely hurting a lot of people. That was hurting a lot of renters, definitely. More of those households overall received eviction notices, 6,630, up to 1.2%. The District Council Network, a letter sent on Thursday, says the financial impact on councils is unsustainable, with many English councils now spending between 20% and 50% of the total net budget on temporary accommodation. Over the past 5 years, spending on temporary accommodation by district councils has skyrocketed by more than 200%, he added. Data from the previous year, the latest available, shows 1.74 billion was spent on temporary accommodation in the year up to March 2023, with an increase of 9% on the previous year. With more accommodation needed in this past year and costs rising, that spending will only have risen further. Charity Crisis said the financial pressures is impacting on local authorities' ability to prevent homelessness, as resources are taking up the crisis intervention as opposed to prevention. New data found that most common reason homelessness people owe duty by councils needed support was due to mental health problems, with 22,500 or 26% with mental health problems. Yeah, mental health is a big issue, which is something that the Labour government says that, and particular West Streeton has said that they were looking to tackle, obviously, within the NHS as well. The letter has called for the government too, so this is what they've put in the letter. Commit to uprate a local housing allowance rate to annually keep up with pace with private rents. Remove the housing benefit subsidy cap currently frozen at 2011 rates. The amount councils can claim for the government for temporary accommodation. Commit to long-term investment to deliver 100,000 homes a year for social rent for the next 5 years. Well, they're looking to deliver more homes anyway, to be fair, but it's a case of how many homes they're going to be building. Create a substantial capital funds to enable councils to rapidly build or adequate generate affordable housing for those at risk of homelessness. Establish a unit for ending homelessness with clear targets and adequate long-term funding. Long-term funding, that's going to be difficult. I'm totally up for a unit to help in homelessness, but the funding may be a bit difficult to get from this government because there's, physical responsibility. The letter says, without swift and decisive action, we fear that more councils will be forced to cut vital preventive services, creating a vicious cycle that will only exacerbate the homelessness crisis and lead to greater costs for the taxpayer. The time for half measures has passed. A paradigm shift is needed to redirect resources from mitigating homelessness to prevent it entirely. Ms. Rayner said, we are facing the acute housing crisis in living memory, and homelessness remains at record levels. This is nothing short of a national scandal. Urgent action must be taken to fix this, which is why we are working across government and with local leaders to develop a long-term strategy to end homelessness for good. Work is already underway to stop people from becoming homelessness in the first place. This includes delivering the biggest increase in social and affordable home building in a generation, abolishing Section 21 no-fault evictions, and multi-million-pound package to provide homes for families at most risk of homelessness. Homelessness charity Mungo said 70% of homeless people recently, supported by its team, said mental health caused them distress and hindered their recovery. Spokesperson said not knowing where your next meal comes from or where you will have a roof over your head at the coming evening can cause extreme stress and anxiety. However, poor mental health can cut people off from the very services that help them out of homelessness, from mental health support specifically. We need to bring homelessness and mental health care together, and we'll continue to work with government and local government to pursue holistic responses. Yeah, that's important. Homelessness and mental health definitely works. There's definitely a link there. There was definitely a link in there as well. But yeah, we are definitely in a crisis, and I would definitely go as far as to call it a national scandal when you have so many children in this situation, so many families in this situation. And that's not even counting those who are just single and have no one as well. We're obviously prioritizing families, we're prioritizing children, and rightfully so, but still, we should not be in this situation in the first place. And this is why you should not vote Conservative, because this is what happens when you leave them in power for so long. We were not this bad before 2010. I'm pretty confident of that. For 14 years of austerity, of cutting, and look where it has got us, guys. Oh, but the pandemic. Oh, the war in Ukraine. No, it's down to government's decisions. The government needs to take its ownership responsibility, and that's what the Conservatives have done. They've left us in this mess. And it's going to take a long time to fix. But it's about what actions that they do now. And I understand the frustration of how people like that Labour aren't being very clear about some of the things that they're doing. I understand that. And I understand that frustration because I do want things fixed now. But Labour are also trying to appeal to people to show that they are physically responsible as well. Because like everything, it's all about politics. And it's all about, for them, it's just as much about staying in power as it is being in power. So what do you guys honestly think? What do you guys make about this national scandal, about the number of children living in temporary accommodation? Is the government doing enough? Can the government do more? Are they going to take action? Do you think we have to wait for the budget for Rachel Reeves to initiate more things? Do you think Angela Rayner will get on top of this? Let me know your thoughts and more about all of this in the comment section down below. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share across social media so others are notified of this video. And subscribe, because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.